Sam, you know what's really important in my line of work at every day?
What?
IVs, 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 IVs.
Nicely done.
Thank
Nicely
you,
done.
thank you. So welcome to the latest installment of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts here at Legend of Ben of Poker Stars.
You know, Ben, I'm a freelance writer, so you know what that means I do all day?
What?
Begs. And I am Sam, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars.
And we are continuing off where we left off last time. We were covering the 09 main events. We had talked about the coverage of the tournament up until the halfway point or so, the first half of day 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we get into that, though, I have to ask, how have you been? What's been your thoughts on the poker world recently?
Yep, so we are underway with the main event. Day 1A just concluded yesterday. Day 1B is currently ongoing. Poker seems to be doing okay. I mean, they were talking about, particularly with the main event, that there are fewer players playing, as you might imagine, coming off of last year, where we had the pandemic and the online live hybrid, where they had the final table live and then had a European section and an American section and smashed the two together. But it is nice seeing people playing poker. I mean, I imagine we'll get something like a couple thousand players this year. We won't get, I think, 6,000.
I saw some reports that they are estimating as much as 7,500 players.
I don't believe that.
Which, again, could just be them trying to hype up how many players they might have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to have 6 day ones, day 1A through 1F.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives players more time to get the money together or to space out their trip to Vegas to ensure that they're able to go for the tournament. So, I mean, we'll see. The first day had, I think, like 540 players or so.
Oh, okay.
So I don't expect each day to have an equal number of players in it, though.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll really see what will happen. It was great seeing Mr. Texas Dolly Doyle Brunson back at the main event for the first time.
Wonderful,
since 2013, his deep run in 2013. Also until, I believe, it was day 4. Day 4 was where he lasted, too.
Mm-hmm.
And the defending champ, Damien Salas, did bust in a pretty awful spots within the first couple of hours.
Yep.
I will be flying into Vegas tomorrow with my close friend of 20 plus years, and he will be playing in day 1D. So I'll be being on his rail, kind of supporting him and being in the action, hoping to run into as many familiar players and faces as possible to get my poker fandom on, and it'll be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty good World Series overall. I mean, in terms of if you want to talk about Player of the Year, which is a metric we kind of riffed on in previous episodes.
Yes.
Jake Schwartz is currently number 1, but he's only 70 points ahead of Kevin Gerhardt. Anthony Zeno is also in the running, and Phil Hellmuth is in 4th place. So if Hellmuth has a deep run, I mean, who knows?
I mean, since our last podcast, Negreanu, Mattisel, Hellmuth, they're all still playing pretty high-level poker, making some deep runs, some deep cashes. I hope to see all of them have some success in the main event.
Yep.
And there's still a question mark as to Mr. Phil Ivey. Will he be partaking in the main event this year? Hopefully he does, because and hopefully he can replicate his success that he had back in 09.
Right.
Because he's really kind of the main character of this entire run from point A to point Z, while I would say that he's not the biggest star of the back half of the coverage as much.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if you're putting the whole package together, he's the main character.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about, how this season, if you will, comes together at the end of, our sort of recap of the second half here. But yeah, I mean, Ivey by far is the main character of of this season, and it would have been nice to have seen him more in recent years, but hopefully he'll play the main event. Just kind of like, Texas Dolly decided, like, hey, I'm bored, I'll just play the main event.
And we will be seeing Ivey quite a bit in a couple of our later episodes, with particularly the 2013 and 2014 main events. He does have some prominent TV coverage in both of those main events.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, I think we should just get back to it.
Yep, absolutely.
I know we talked about how we thought that the '09 main event coverage had definitely improved in some major areas for in comparison to the last couple of years, '07, '08. As far as the quality of episodes 14 and onward, I think there is some kind of up and downs, not because of the production itself, but just because of what they actually end up showing us. My interest kind of had this sort of hodgepodge of, I love this is kind of dull, but I love this, but that's kind of dull, kind of thought process for me.
I'd say that I feel that way toward the beginning of the second half, days 5 and day 6, and to some extent day 7. But I think day 8 is pretty good. I like the way that it's presented. I like just because of the natural tension of the day, how they're hyping up. We mentioned Ivey being the main character, but Jeff Schulman also gets a lot of coverage, especially toward the end of the coverage. But both of them get a lot of hype. So there's this good through line there, seeing how they perform as players in that episode that keeps my interest. And then I really like the final table.
The final table, is very, very good, but we'll get to that when we get there. I actually really liked the Day 5 episodes to begin off here because they somehow, by the fortune, they had all the big names side by side at the table.
That is funny, yeah.
These huge names. You have the defending champ. You have the third place from the year prior. You have Jeff Schulman. You have Elke, who... maybe he's not as big a name nowadays, but at the time he was like a poker player, like number 1 ranked.
Right. Yeah.
That's it's a big deal to me. And just that kind of all at the featured table for basically all of day 5 essentially. That was really cool.
And at the secondary table, we have Esfandiari, who's always a pleasure to watch.
Esfandiari, as much as I love Helmuth Mattisau and Grano on TV, Esfandiari is the 360. He's a great commentator. He's a great player. He's entertaining. He plays good. He puts up results in the main event. And
he doesn't berate players. The only worst thing he's done is just pee in a bottle at the table. So
And Pants Mikey.
And Pants Mikey, which is great. Yeah, I love the lines that he does.
This is the first of many runs that Esfandiari will have deep into the main event. It's his deepest run, oddly enough, but he's fun. He's a fun to watch. And we also have. I found some entertainment value in seeing all these faces and names that will become relevant in later years. Guys like Daryl Jace, guys like Matt Affleck, Kyle Bowker. These are just names they flash by on the screen so quickly, but we will see them on featured TV tables in the years to come.
Yeah, I completely forgot that Ben Lamb had a deep run this year.
Yes, Ben Lamb,
great guy. Wow.
A top player. Put together 3 super deep main event runs, this being his first of those 3 runs in '09, 14th place. We'll get there, but that's good to see. But going into episodes 14 and 15 conclude the day 5, kind of counting down the women that are left, as well as going in, just getting us lots of TV time of Joe Hashem, Dennis Phillips, Eastgate, and Jeff Schulman.
Yeah.
And again, I really enjoyed seeing these guys all at the same table.
Yeah, I mean the banter is pretty good. I don't know, maybe it's just the poker play. It's just a little lacking for me. There's just not too many exciting hands or something. I don't know.
The hands themselves aren't crazy.
Yeah.
Viral, but I don't think too many hands on the main event are particularly viral compared to '08 in the first place. So it's not as big a deal to me. And again, just them being all together side by side is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice coincidence, and there's definitely some good banter there. But I like having both sides of the coin. There being funny banter but also good play and interesting bluffs and stuff.
Yeah.
And the nuts segments in these episodes are just not interesting.
No, the nuts segments. I would say, ironically, the nuts segments and the wild card hands were all very forgettable.
Yeah.
For this entire cluster of episodes, some of the interviews were fine, but the segments as a whole were a big letdown for sure.
The one thing I found interesting from the nuts was that Helmuth was asked to be on Dancing with the Stars. That's the only funny thing. But yeah.
I mean, reviewing my notes, I might be reminded of something that amuses me, like Esfandiari in this episode had hired a life coach, and if he breaks those rules, he always feel lock money. It's just kind of a funny, random non sequitur to a self-imposed rule of his.
That is cute, yeah.
But I guess the driving narrative of day 5 was always Ivey starting off the day of a big stack and then just losing up basically a million chips at one point, and then trying to come back up.
Right.
So that's kind of the C plot of sorts, kind of in the background throughout these episodes.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of players. Tom Schneider becoming the chip leader.
Yep.
Who we know as being the previous year's Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And then other big names. We still see Kenny Tran, JC Tran, sprinkled here and there. A lot of players that we knew were making deep runs and were still alive by day 5 of the tournament, which is again adds to the entertainment value of these episodes to me.
Yeah, I mean we got. There's always a degree of luck in terms of assessing the entertainment value of poker because it's really tied to how big, how long these big names run for. I mean, this year we just had so many good pros, so many personable people make deep runs.
Mm-hmm.
One player that we, haven't mentioned yet is Lou Diamond Phillips, who's a Golden Globe nominated actor, been in a bunch of movies, not like a huge A-list star. And, he does bust in this episode, but it is kind of nice to just, see him there and hear him talk about poker. And it's nice to see a Hollywood celebrity make a day 5 run,
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of covers my thoughts on day 5. I mean, again, I talked about part 1 of a 3-part day 5 episode. They had so much footage of these featured players. That's my thoughts on why they probably split it into 3 episodes instead of 2.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that Denise having her aces mucked by the dealer still just is so painful.
That's brutal.
Oh, my God.
It's so brutal. And then just the way she comes in and says, I had 2 aces! Oh, my God, long goes. It's just got to be brutal to be in the main event.
I mean, I guess that's the right call.
I guess, but, I mean, the dealer not only mucked her cards, but put it in the muck that they weren't retrievable, too. So it was a double whammy.
Ugh, yeah.
So I think by the end of day 5 into day 6, we are left with 185 players,
mm-hmm.
2 women remaining, Nicole Pepe and Leo Marquez.
Yep.
And episode 16 begins with another Prahlad Freeman rap.
To be fair, it's better than the last one.
Yes.
So, game respects game there, all right?
Yes. We do get Prahlad and Tom Schneider at table 1. Table 2 actually has both of the women remaining, Marquez and Pepe,
mm-hmm.
along with Bernard Perner, who just kind of baffled me how much I beat up on him on day 4, and yet we cut back to him, he has like all the chips just randomly. We don't see any of that
is funny,
meteoric rise for Perner.
Yeah, and then we also get Eastgate. We get Eastgate going to Hashem's table, which is just hilarious. I love that.
Yes. With just one Bilzerian brother remaining at this point.
Yep, Dan Bilzerian, the Instagram guy, finally busts. Thank God. What a weirdo.
Yes. So this episode did have a little bit of production error. Once again, the commentary by Lon did not reflect the blind size in play. So at one point, he had mentioned that like a raise was 3 times a big blind when the blinds were the level earlier. So he said that like the raise was like 60,000, 3x raise,
mm-hmm.
but the blinds were 8 and 16,000.
Weird.
Again, I'm kind of like laser trained on looking out for these little errors in the production. So maybe the average viewer wouldn't notice, but I notice.
I just feel like that's a little sloppy. I mean, they should just make those edits in post.
Absolutely.
It's dubbed in, so you might as well just make
Absolutely.
it in post.
And then this episode, so the first half of day 6
mm-hmm.
Brings us down from 185 down to 146 for
mm-hmm.
episode 17 of part 2 of day 6.
Yep.
We do lose a couple of big names in this episode. Hashem, JC Tran, and Elke all bite the big one in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
We do finally see our first sighting of Joe Cada in a pot against Kenny Tran. So the winner not appearing until episode 17, still an improvement from Eastgate not appearing until like day 6 or 7.
And Cada's at least shown, beating a player. That's his first impression of him, whereas Eastgate's first impression is,
yes,
I don't even remember.
Yep.
So.
We do see some pretty big hands, Billy Kopp,
mm-hmm.
and in a big hand, as well as Steve Begleiter with Phil Ivey at table 2. Begleiter bluffing Ivey of 8 high.
Yeah, Begleiter's sort of been floating around in the coverage. He was in the last episode losing some chips. we're starting to sort of see the November Niners in focus here, but still, as we mentioned, Cada shows up for the first time. We still really don't have a good impression of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there was a player, Mr. Craig, who had survived being down to 400 chips on day one, and then spinning it up to 100,000 on the first day. And I almost want to mention in episode 16, Prahlad Friedman discusses Anti-Gate.
Oh, yes.
And it's just, again, kind of like Scotty Nguyen discussing his drunken antics in the horse event. You kind of want to hear them say one thing, they don't really say it. So, it's interesting. It speaks to the character of certain poker players that they don't understand what's right and wrong at times.
Yeah, he doesn't. He kind of just laughs and shrugs it off, and he says, I make jokes at the table now. Like, hey, did you put your ante in? It's just, you can't accuse someone of stealing at the poker table. You just can't do that.
Yes. Hashem does make a couple of big folds in this episode before he busts. Kind of the short stack, kind of hanging in there as long as they can, making the right folds until they eventually go busto.
With less than 5 picks. Sorry, buddy.
Yes. But, you gotta say, this episode for Table 1 had Eastgate Hashem, J.C. Tran, Dennis Phillips, and Billy Kopp. Is that not perhaps the biggest named featured table ever?
It's got to be up there, yeah.
Billy Kopp hits $5 million, chip leader, top of the leaderboard, a position he would keep for the majority of the rest of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that this episode had some great table talk, just sort of the Hashem, J.C. Tran,
belly
rub talk, made for the first time for me that the Table 1 antics outshined the other parts of the episode.
What does JC stand for? Just call. I love that. That's great. Just all the jokes about how big, Billy Kopp's stack is, the table's tilting over. Just little stuff like that.
Yes.
Nice.
Because for the most part, I felt that the Table 1 content was outshined by the Table 2 outer table stuff.
Yeah.
This definitely reversed that trend for at least one episode.
I'd agree with you. Yeah, that's true.
Yes. Day 6, Part 3, kind of has the narrative of can Eastgate and Phillips repeat as the tournament hits under 100 players. And so both of them, again, remained at Table 1, along with Joe Seabach.
Yep.
Who, again, has kind of been one of those backgrounds, outer table characters, not really in the spotlight, but he gets put in that spotlight in this episode.
Yeah.
And at one point, though, the featured table breaks, and we have a new table of Darvin Moon, Tom Schneider, and Dennis Phillips.
Yeah, Darvin Moon's popped up mainly on the leaderboard before. This is our first real chance to get a look at him. The Western Maryland logger, as they often refer to him over and over again.
Yes, we just get a little taste of Darvin Moon's episode before we'll get more of a substantial course of him later. And again, I think Darvin Moon is a great character for both the game, for poker, and for the 09 main event.
Of course. I just love just how he carries himself at the table, his sort of gruff, almost self-deprecating vibe.
Absolutely. He's nice. Definitely comes off as a nice guy. Doesn't berate other players. Doesn't swear. Even when something goes wrong, he doesn't freak out. Rest in peace, Darvin Moon. You were very entertaining to watch for sure.
Yeah, he passed away last year. I think from complications from a surgery or something. So
yes,
yeah, shame. But his memory is definitely well earned and well respected still.
So Eastgate, in again one of the most impressive title defenses since Raymer in 05, making the final 3 tables. Eastgate, short stacked, goes all in and gets rivered in a 3-way pot when he was all in to bust. But again, a very impressive title defense for sure. We also lose Kenny Tran, one of our favorite arrogant, I'm a genius players.
Oh, of course.
Nicole Pepe does meet her main event demise as well, as does Matt Affleck, who we don't really see much of at all, but what will be later referenced in 2010 as far as him being the chip leader at one point with a couple hundred players left and then not making it much longer past that.
Yeah, it seems like it was sort of a steady meltdown, so to speak, that he had a bunch of chips and he kind of just lost some pots, misplayed some hands, and then lost his stack. That's how it's sort of been referred to subsequently. But yeah, we'll get a lot from him next year.
Yeah. We do get probably one of the funniest rail chants of all time for Mr. Tom Schneider at the outer tables. His wife over her stack up to the top, yeah, baby! It's just so funny.
Can you do that in Vegas? Just once.
I'll think about it. I'm a little self-conscious, so I'll maybe.
Stack them at the top. Come on, it's not that hard.
Stack them.
You gotta do the hand gestures.
I know. I'll think about it.
A really nice segment about him and his wife talking about how they met, but how she was like she thought he was cute, but decided not to ask him out because he beat her in a pot. Like, I just love that. That's cute.
I will say I did enjoy the segments in this episode. We also got Dennis Phillips discussing his final table experience, as well as Barbara Enright just being interviewed a little bit about her final table experience, being the highest finish by a woman in the main event.
The only woman to make the final table.
As painful as that has been to continue to be the record, yes.
Come on, JJ Liu. Come on.
I mean, this episode is kind of where the pots really start getting big.
Oh, yeah.
This is where the 1K chips go out, and now the lowest denomination is 5K chips. So, again, as will be kind of a pattern for the rest of the tournament. You'll see outer table pots swell up, big all-ins, millions and millions of chips exchanging owners. This is kind of where that becomes the default kind of style of hand shown outer tables.
Right, yeah, a lot of big pots.
And, Darvin Moon for me, felt like the 09 version of Dennis Phillips, kind of an older, average Joe player, accumulating chips, doing the main event, and kind of, being the guy, the average Joe that the audience can kind of latch on to.
Yeah, I mean, they make that comparison explicit.
Yes.
I think Lon says something, makes that analogy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, he just comes across as almost shocked by how successful he's being. I mean, he's, Esfandiari goes, aces, kings, and he's like, it's just unreal. I just keep getting these hands.
Yes, and of course, Darvin Moon, he will be a big chip leader moving forward.
Right.
And again, he gets cards, and that's what happens. You get cards, you get chips.
Right.
So day 6 ends with approximately 64 players left.
Yeah.
And something I noticed was we are old G4 X-Play fans. The intro music to episode 19 is the exact same music used in the Passion of the Christ 2 trailer.
Is it real?
It really is.
I didn't notice that.
You gotta rewatch it.
I have to rewatch it.
It is. I wasn't sure if you would recall that.
We're talking about X-Play, by the way.
Obscure reference alert. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
So
I would look at that.
Yeah.
I noticed that.
So episode 19 is the first half of day 7. Day 7 will be broken into just 2 parts, actually, with Esfandiari, Beglighter, Aikenhead, and Zaki, who, while not given too much focus, was always near the top of the chip counts by this point. So you had some big names, some future November 9ers in this tournament, and a big stack at table 1. So pretty good table.
Yep.
Table 2, also pretty big names. We had Shulman, Leo Marquez, Lucky Chewy Lichtenberger, Eric Buckman, and Grayson Ramage, who I just recognize from his later main event success in a few years from this point. We do see some interesting play, to say the least. We have Jeff Shulman in the wild card hand with 7-3 up against a King Jack straight. I mean, but for the most part, these wild card hands were a big letdown compared to the first half of 09. I didn't feel that a lot of the hands were just kind of average, like a flop bet, fold kind of vibe. I mean, and there weren't really all that many crazy bluffs.
Yeah, same area.
Didn't seem like, which is really kind of what I like to say for a wild card hand. Either a crazy cooler or a crazy bluff is kind of a wild card hand you want to see. We do see an interesting hand at the table 1 where it was Fair versus Fam, where he gets accused of slow rolling with kings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in the main event, I don't think it's a slow roll with aces.
Yeah, I don't think so.
At no point do I ever think kings is a slow roll.
Yeah, and I mean, the coverage, it was pretty quick.
Exactly.
I mean, again, we don't know live how long, but I think a minute. I think anything less than a minute you can't say is a slow roll at all.
And much like the episode previous, this is kind of a purging of lots of the big names that were still in the tournament or in this episode. We lose Prahlad Freeman, we lose Dennis Phillips, we lose Joe Seebach, Tom Schneider, Adam Bilzerian, all hit the rail on the outer tables.
Yep.
Billy Kopp wins a couple of big pots to hit the 11 million and 14 million chip marks, which is astronomical. That's more chips than half the final table would have.
I know, crazy.
We do get another stack to the stack in this episode, which is again always makes me laugh. We do see Mr. Mark Etienne McLaughlin.
That was crazy. I was like, I had to double check to make sure it was the right person.
It is, but we don't even see his bust out hand though in this main event. It's a real shame because he'll be a future November Niner, and I always like seeing. It makes you realize just how many players are just very consistently able to make deep runs in this main event.
Yeah, I mean, watching over these episodes, I mean, that's definitely the case. I've always thought, like, oh man, we only had Phil Ivey in 09, we haven't had any big name pros, make deep runs. But it's pretty clear, like, there are players who do definitely make several runs within quick succession. So
absolutely,
I get a lot more respect for these guys.
We do learn some more about Billy Kopp in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about busting Hashem and Eastgate. He mentions how he's a 6-year senior in school. And it's funny because he's 23 at this point. He looks older than me right now.
Yeah, he looks like he's in his late 20s. Minimum.
I mean, he looks older than me, and he's younger than me. I'll say that. I mean, it always kind of amuses me. We do see, we learn a little bit about James Aikenhead, his psychic vibes of like making it to deep in the main event. I mean, a little bit of weak sauce of learning about him, but.
Yeah, but we do hear from Norm that he was a train conductor and he screwed up so badly once with like letting passengers off, like somebody fell off the platform or something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like something to that effect. So that's the most we learned of James Aikenhead, but it's neat.
And Ivey has more chips at this point in the tournament in the coverage than he'll have basically until the very end of the final table.
Yeah,
when he chips it a bit. It's interesting.
I mean, he's definitely in the coverage, but it's not like he gets much going.
Yes. Episode 20 goes day 7, part 2, 43 players going down to 27, or the last 3 tables.
Mm-hmm.
We do see, it's basically the Esfandiari show, basically. He's at the featured table still, with Darvin Moon, who joins in a little bit late, Aikenhead, Cada, McLaughlin, Zaki, and Eugene Kachalov, who I recognize that name from our retrospective, looking forward, looking back kind of routine.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we get some great Darvin Moon quotes. I mean, this has been not particularly quotable main event, but basically anything Darvin Moon says is instantly quotable to me.
Pretty much. If I ever have to play, you guys are so far ahead of me. He's honest.
I'm new at this game. I'm not sure. I just glanced at it. He makes a huge 3-bet to $5 million and drops those lines. I love it.
It's so good.
Just his table talk with Esfandiari is just gold.
It's not fair to take and give back. Love that line.
Yeah. So Darvin Moon and Esfandiari are in a lot of hands, and they even square off in the wild card hand where they have the exact same hands, but Esfandiari applies enough pressure to get Moon to fold. Right. We do see some pretty big hands, an amazing fold by Balmager, folding folding a set on a board that Darvin had straight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's those spots. I try to put myself in those people's shoes and think, can I fold there? What would you do?
I mean, it's hard to, again, with my 2021 poker intelligence, throwing myself back to 09, keeping in mind that I'm watching an edited show versus playing live with somebody for hours on end. It's kind of hard to make a comparison between the two, but I mean, I'm a tight player, so I think I could make a fold like that. Mm-hmm. I think I could do it.
Especially against somebody who just seems to be hitting the deck every hand.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to bluff to accumulate chips.
Yeah, I think I could make that fold, but I don't know, it'd be tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's just Moon's so sick. I mean, he's just so sick in these episodes. Again, they're showing us the hands where he wins, but I imagine just from all the table talk that's going on that they probably didn't cut out too many losing hands from him. Mm-hmm. But geez.
I mean, I felt that the majority of the play we see in this main event is either pretty standard or just kind of pretty solid play.
Yeah.
But we do see some pretty awful calls too. Mr. Tamayo making this ludicrous three-barrel call with ace king high against Billy Kopp. I mean, I can't defend that play at all.
Yeah, Tamayo was doing pretty well up till that point.
Yeah, and it's just somehow. Maybe he was a little bit tilted over his earlier loss. He lost a big hand to Buckman, where his inferior pocket pair made it straight to survive on the river. But when you're that close to the in the final 30, 40 players, I'm playing a bit more cautiously maybe than I should be.
Yeah, you got to adjust your play.
Yeah. Leo Marquez does get a little bit of highlighting her kind of being her poker life and her early success in her poker career, including, of course, being the last woman standing in the main event, making a very deep run. Even by last woman left standard, this is a very deep run.
Yep.
Not really since Amy Duke's 10th place finish has anyone really made it to the last couple of tables.
Well, last year, we had, what's her name?
Oh, excuse me, Tiffany Michelle.
Tiffany Michelle.
Besides her. But Marquez is more likable than Michelle, so.
I suppose so.
Yes.
Michelle only did like a couple bad things.
Oh, come on. The French fries of her fingers, come on.
That's funny. That's just funny to me.
By the end of this episode, Esfandiari does crawl along, making it into day 8. He does a double up of aces towards the end to kind of keep himself above water.
Yep.
Billy Kopp well ahead of 15 million in first place at this point. Ivey was second in chips with 28 players left, which is just crazy to think considering how he has the most unique, bizarre, but the low-key day 8 of all time, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
So let's just get into it.
I mean, Ivey on the day before the final table, it's like his kryptonite or something. Like, with Hashem,
yes.
Being basically bullied around by Joe Hashem, just so weird.
The driving narrative factor of the day 8, which is broken into 4 episodes, 2 episodes each covering the Division of 1 table.
Right.
In the past, we would see usually one episode go from 3 tables down to 2 tables, and then 2 down to 1. This one breaks it up into 2 parts, airing on the same night in consecutive weeks.
Right.
So the driving narrative of day 8 is Ivey's curse of the final 3 tables, because each of his deep runs in the main events that day, he eventually goes busted at the final table, and that was kind of, he's trying to overcome his past demons, essentially.
Right.
He begins 4th in chips on day 8 with 11.3 million. Of the top 10 to begin day 8, 7 of those top 10 will make the final table. So it's kind of one of those days where the short stacks go out and the big stacks get bigger.
Right.
And so with the 4 episode structure, how did you feel that functioned as the concluding chapter of the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Ivey's trouble with the final 3 tables, but it's also just a natural extension of it's Phil fucking Ivey. You have to have him be the feature. And as I mentioned at the start of this, we do get Jeff Schulman, him being a 7th place finisher in 2000, becoming possibly one of the few people to make 2 main event final tables in the 10 years from 2000 to 2009. So we do get a little bit of him as well. We get a little bit of talk of, these supposed players who might be the youngest player to win the main event. Won't they make it or not? But yeah, I mean, Ivey's the main through thread. He eats up a lot of the oxygen, and I think it works. I think it works as a narrative thread. I think it does. 4 episodes may sound a little excessive if you haven't seen them, but I do think it pays off in how the edit is constructed. There's enough tension just naturally going from 3 tables down to 1 table. And then I think there's just enough time to just show how the poker actually is played out. So I'd say it works.
I mean, I mostly agree. I mean, Ivey just kind of trends down the majority of these 4 episodes. He wins a couple of small pots, but he's kind of, if you had a graph of his chip stuff, it's a pretty, wouldn't be very many dips and valleys. It'd be just kind of a weird sort of straight line for the most part. We do see Billy Kopp and Darvin Moon kind of dominating the chip counts. Darvin Moon begins with 20 million, Kopp with 16 million. Leo Marquez begins 26 out of 27, and Nick Maimoni being 27th of 27 to start the day. Ivey, I mean, for the most part, they've probably more than anybody ever before. We've seen the most hole cards kind of be shown briefly and then folded as if to illustrate how few hands a player was receiving.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing that Ivey doesn't do anything really in these 4 episodes, but I just say the natural tension of whether or not he makes the final table or not is enough to provide a narrative.
I mean, but he's never all in called during day 8, so you don't have those super high adrenaline moments to get your pulse up. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a little unusual to do that when you're essentially going to be then devoting most of the major focus to other players.
Right. Okay, that's fair.
So each episode covers either 4 or 5 eliminations. So this first one going from 27 down to 23. And Esfandiari on table 2 ends up being eliminated in 24th place to end that episode 21.
Right.
And again, Esfandiari, I think he's very watchable, very enjoyable. My biggest problem with this episode, though, was they did not show a starting chip count for all 27 players.
Oh, they should have done that. Yeah.
I had to work it out from the commentary and kind of between the lines from everything to get that sense of who was at the very bottom. For example, Leo Marquez and Nick Maimone.
Mm-hmm.
Marquez is the first one to bust. I mean, when you're that short stuck on day 8, you kind of have to get something going. So I understand that. Obviously, with only 3 tables left, it's no longer the outer tables.
Right.
It's now table 1, table 2, and table 3. So each one kind of has a camera there at all times, and so every action is captured on camera.
Yeah, so we get to really see in detail how all these players operate. I mean, I think it works. I mean, Nick Maimone is sort of the sub thread of these episodes. Of this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He doubles up numerous times, often from behind to keep his tournament rolling, and that includes through Ivey, who laments how many chips he's handing off when he has to give them up.
It's a rare human moment from Ivey that we actually sort of see the facade break for a moment.
Ivey does mention how he is more patient this year in one of his interview segments, which I think is not only true, we actually do see it. We physically see it, which always kind of adds a bit more power to that kind of interview.
Yeah, he's definitely playing a little bit tighter, so to speak, a little bit slower with his actions. Maybe he just kind of wanted to fold his way to the final table. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it's not about the money. It's about the win.
Yeah.
So folding with the final table, I don't quite buy that, but
just the way he plays, that's just how it feels like he's playing to me.
By episode 22, it's the intro kind of emphasizes Ivey and Shulman versus the world, basically.
Pretty much.
Shulman and Ivey being at, I believe they're different, at the same table, table 1.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think there's some enjoyable table talk here with Lucky Chewy getting in there with trying to get Ivey for Lego poker.
Oh, that's great.
That's pretty funny.
I love that. Lichtenberger shows up. Yeah. Looking like he's 17 years old or something. But.
There's a wild card hand here with Ivey up against Lichtenberger, and I think it's a very small pot, but they were so desperate to give Ivey a hand that he won that they just picked any hand that he played to make that work for that segment.
So he picked up like $1 million. That's good, right?
I mean, I guess. Ben Lamb kind of rises and falls here in this episode.
Yeah.
He doubles up in a big flip to Begleiter and then gives away most of it to Begleiter in a hand where he had aces against Jack 9, and Begleiter made 2 pair. That's the kind of hand of aces that just you can't win with them, can you? Can't win without them.
It's gross. It's a gross spot. I think you have. Jeez.
Yeah. Antoine Saout, we do see him, and he's 25. But he looks like he's 32. Again, one of those guys that's supposed to be younger than me, but looks way older than me moments.
He does, yeah.
Saoud also, again, another one of those players that puts up results and has made 3 big, deep runs in the main event in the last 12 years.
Yeah, pretty good player. And, had a pretty good shot to win 09.
We'll get to him. I want to talk about each player's play at the final table one by one, but he definitely impressed me the most out of everybody there.
Yeah.
We do get, I think that part 2 of Day 8 was definitely a weak episode in general. I didn't think there was any memorable hands or kind of nothing hands, as I kind of say, where it just kind of like the wild card hand kind of forgettable.
Yeah, we should mention, by the way, Cada has been a short stack through most of Day 8. It's pretty impressive to see him.
He was 21 of 23 in chips at this point.
So he's just really hanging in there. He pops up a couple times, but nothing huge.
Yes. Episode 23, now at the halfway point of Day 8, down to 2 tables. The narrative focuses on kind of the youngsters of the main event. People have a chance to break Peter Eastgate's record for the youngest main event winner. Joe Cada being one of them, Nick Maimone being another, Lucky Chewy being, I think he busted, right? This episode, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it gets whittled down to It's basically just a Cada at this point.
Yep.
We do hear the chant from Begleiter, "Bags, bags, bags," as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
This episode, always kind of funny.
The Bear Stearns executive, keep in mind this is 2009, like months after Bear Stearns goes belly up. So Norm does not let up on him once.
Not once.
Constantly making jokes about Bear Stearns and
it's one of the few funny moments of this main event coverage that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I just love it.
Begleiter does get interviewed here. We learn he kind of compares his toning to the Super Bowl 42 Giants-Patriots game, which is a little triggering for me, but that's okay. Being a Bostonian, but that's all right. I'm okay with it.
And we get a segment from Moon who talks about going from softball to poker because they're basically just all getting too old to play, which I thought was cute.
That's pretty funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a huge fan of the segment, I did somewhat enjoy the straight from the pros Raymer versus Devilfish hands.
Mm-hmm.
Devilfish, again, he's just this arrogant kind of like the British Helmuth kind of older British Helmuth character. Rest in peace, but so. And honestly, I didn't physically see what Raymer was referring to to tell how he looked nervous. That definitely goes a long way to making those segments a bit better than their average kind of male level for me.
Yeah, of course. I didn't really get much from really any of these segments, but a little things like that do help a bit.
It's far. By this point in the tournament, there are just so many big pots, whether it's all-ins or just double ups or eliminations, players going out with it this late in the tournament. Like an Ivey, he's hanging around. He's in 15th with 18 left. He began in the top 5 in chips when the day began.
Yeah.
He hovers around the 6 million mark pretty much the whole time as the blinds escalate. The blinds began around like the 6120 or something level.
Mm-hmm.
So by now the blinds are up to 100, 200 and whatnot, and he's just kind of hanging around. Which I'd probably do the same thing if I had those cards, but. The episodes do make a strong point of updating us what his count is and what it was at the start of the day, as repetitive as that might be.
Yeah, and he only plays, if my notes are correct, 2 hands in this episode.
And he wins both of them.
Yeah, there's small pots, but just to show how little he's actually playing.
And so I think a big part of, particularly part 4, but we'll get there, is the chip distribution at table 1 and table 2.
Oh, yeah.
Because, as Joe McKeon has demonstrated, when you have one big stack of 2 tables left, it creates this odd sort of flow of the tournament where one table ends up busting more players than the other one.
Right.
And that kind of artificially allows short stacks to make to the final table because they weren't where the action was actually happening.
Yeah, and then it's just almost like a center of orbit around the big stacks. They're just constantly playing big hands.
Yes.
And just bullying people.
Nick Maimoni, who was kind of the dark horse underdog of day 8, does end up busting to Buckman in 15th, which again, anytime you begin a tournament 27th of 27 and make it to 15th, that's still pretty impressive.
Now, Lon says when LeKay busts in 16th, that he busted in 15th. Did you notice that?
I missed that, but you're right.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Yeah, LeKay busted in 16th. They show the graphic on the scene, and Long says, "Oh, he busted in 15th place." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh, was there an error there? Did I miss an elimination?" No, I caught that.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Ben Lamb, who again is really only kind of shown in day 8. Mm-hmm. He gets mooned by 3 nines.
Yes, that's the right way to say it.
Pretty brutal for Ben Lamb. Table 2 had the majority of the chips at Darvin, Moon, and Billy Kopp. Big stacks. Definitely, probably, even if it's like 60%, 40% of the chips broken down, that goes a long way into into the how it works. I do feel that the bust outs here were some pretty bad blow ups or overplaying their hands for sure. Which again, that's the one way I just would not want to go out.
Yeah,
is just blowing up a big stack or medium stack this far in the tournament.
Yeah, of course. Running kings against aces, whatever, that happens, right? Bad beat, that happens. Just tilting off your stack, blowing up.
I felt the Billy Kopp against Jordan Smith at table 2, the ace king call, I would never call like that.
Yeah,
when it's for me, it's all about the multiplier of how many more chips is it to call compared to how much I've put in the pot.
Right.
If I put in 2 million and the race for 10 million, okay, I'm probably gonna fold. If it's for 6 million, okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I guess enough about part 3 of day 8. Episode 24, day 8, part 4. 14 players going down to 9.
Mm-hmm.
Anton Saud actually being the short stack with 14 left, to my surprise.
I was surprised.
Writing down the players at each table, comparing to each other. Ivey, Saud, Cada, Begleiter, Aiken, and Buckman all at table 1. And then table 2 is basically the death table at this point, because I think 4 or all 5 of the eliminations are all at table 2, or were originally on table 2 when the episode began.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, Calderero,
Now, going back to your Bear Stearns comments, we get a great. I think it was Cada talking to Ivey, like, didn't Moneymaker beat? Oh, it was Begleiter or something. It was Begleiter saying, like, didn't Moneymaker beat you in like 10th place at this point in the tournament? And then Norm chimes in, didn't you run Bear Stearns to the ground? That's just the greatest 1-2 punch of commentary.
Yeah, it's just great. I love it.
Antoine Saud makes a great bluff shove into Begleiter, and then we get some violence at the main event. He hits something, but it's like the as close to crossing the line in good taste as possible, but only just barely.
Yeah, like kind of like
a playful tap, or like a.
I wouldn't say it's a tap. Like a slap.
Yeah, it was like but it had some velocity to it.
Yeah, and then like Saud actually turns his neck, snaps. But like they shake hands afterward, and it's all good. But I was like, when I saw that, I was like, whoa.
That's worse than Mikey checking someone's pulse in the middle of a hand. I mean, that's bad.
Yeah, that should have been a penalty.
Yeah. Oh, and so the 5 eliminations in this episode: Jamie Robbins, Ben Lamb, Billy Kopp, Colorado, and Jordan Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Robbins, interesting guy. He will make a deep run in the 2012 main events.
Oh, okay.
He runs so bad in this episode. It is absurd. Exception of 1 2-outer, which I guess is running pretty good. But besides that, he just gets super unlucky. I feel so bad. Of all the players to go out, I feel the worst for him.
Not Kopp?
Not Kopp. No, he did that to himself. He did that to himself. So, again, probably the most viral hand, I guess, to me, from a poker point of view. Maybe not from, comedy, entertainment value. It's that hand.
It's the Kopp hand?
It's the Kopp hand, to me.
I have it on my screen here in big black letters. Kopp F's up.
I mean, it's brutal, and we can talk about it, I guess, because at table 2, Billy Kopp has like 19 million in chips. Darvin Moon has like 20-something, 25 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
They're both, again, top of the leaderboard. I don't think they're quite first and second, but they're definitely, I think, both top 5 or so.
Something like that, yeah.
Billy Kopp makes an under-the-gun raise, 6-handed. This is with 12 players left, with 5-3 suited. Darvin defends with Queen-Jack suited.
King-Jack, right? Or was it Queen-Jack?
It was Queen-Jack.
It was Queen-Jack, sorry.
Flop comes King, 9, Deuce, all diamonds. So both players make a flush. It goes bet, call. And then the turn, it goes check, bet, raise, re-raise, all in. Darvin Moon, kind of crosses his arms and then grabs his hat to kind of clear out his hair and then calls it. It's just Billy Kopp with 12 left. You just cannot play that recklessly like that.
Yeah, Kopp leads out with 2 million. Moon raises to 6 million. You could just call there.
The pot was like 3 million, so even the 2 million is a pretty big sizing.
Yeah, I mean, Moon raising to 6 million, that shows strength, I think.
Not to mention, you have to wonder, what does Kopp put Darvin on? Which is, again, it's hard to do that.
Yeah,
as Darvin Moon. But generically speaking, I mean, maybe a king, ace king, king queen, maybe, or something. But even then, the board is pairing, so you have to consider what hands are you beating.
Right, exactly. It just doesn't make any sense.
And by this point, Darvin hadn't played into his Darvin Gump sort of moments yet, so he hasn't shown, make a big raise and then fold for a little bit more. So Billy Kopp shouldn't be expecting Darvin to be raising that big and folding very often.
But he does.
And in that hand, Kopp goes from a lock to make the final table, because this is 12 left after all, to out in 12th place. And Darvin takes a massive chip lead, like a third of the chips in play at this point.
Yeah, he's kind of the John Murphy of 09, the sort of like college player who gets a bunch of chips, gets hyped up, and then goes out in one hand.
And Lon makes a comment, that hand that we talked about for years, well, here we are, this is 12 years later, and we're talking about it, so it was a prophecy, and it's true.
And has he done anything else? I don't recall.
I think he's shown in the 2010 main event. I think he is interviewed about that hand and stuff, so we'll definitely hear from him again, but okay. I don't think he's done much since then, no.
Yeah.
And I looked this up actually. So 4 minutes after Kopp goes bust is when Jimmy Robbins busts to Ivey.
Oh, so it was that fast?
It was that fast.
Wow.
So this will be a pattern for the final table as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That pretty quickly back-to-back eliminations. Robbins had doubled up on a 2-outer against Joe Cada's aces, and then Ivey actually gets an elimination very close to the final table bubble to get a little bit of momentum going into the final table.
Yep, and then we're all 10-handed, and it's,
So the final table bubble lasted 38 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So we've seen bubbles last longer or shorter. This was relatively short, all things considered.
Yeah, I'd say so.
They went on a break before the final table bubble began, so they were on break longer than they actually played.
That's funny.
Ivey, Jordan Smith had 15 million chips, which was good for 6th place at this point of 10 left. Ivey, again, everybody else more or less where they would be for the final table chip count wise, except for Darvin Moon, obviously, going to be a little bit lower. And Jordan Smith with aces gets mooned by pocket eights on an 8-4 deuce board. And honestly, this is the moment I don't blame Jordan Smith whatsoever.
Yeah, of course.
On that, it's such a harmless board. The only thing you're worried about is eights. Everything else you're beating.
Right, of course.
Jacks, queens, kings. You're not worried about 2-pair, and I don't think deuces or fours are really, given how that pre-flop action went, are viable options for Moon to have.
Yeah, I don't blame him at all for that move.
It's painful. It's, I think, a good 15, 16, 17 million that Jordan Smith had that goes to Darvin Moon, which who gets 59 million chips, 30% of the chips in play. And from there, it's just an unreal run for Darvin Moon.
Yep. And Ivey has made the final table. He's done it.
He has, but as we've said before, seventh in chips, and 7th is kind of that brutal kind of top pro cursed position to finish in.
A little bit, yeah.
We've kind of seen it before with Lee Watkinson, Chino Ream.
But didn't Watkinson get 8th?
Oh, you might be right. Well,
yeah, Child got 7th, I think.
I think it was 7 chips though or something.
That's all right, close enough.
Yeah, and so my analysis on day 8 as a whole, I mean, Ivey just kind of grinds through it. He begins with 11 million, ends with just under 10 million. So he kind of skating by. Kopp, is it perhaps the biggest day 7/8, last 3 tables blow up of all time?
Oh, of course.
I mean, it's worse than Anton Morgenstern because that was a slow and steady blow up, whereas this was all at once.
I don't know. I think when Scotty wins the worst blow up. Because I feel like he wins in 07 if he makes the final table.
Fair. Well, it's not blow up as far as I mean, Kopp wasn't a lock to win.
Okay,
he played pretty solid up to that point, but I mean.
Yeah, but I feel like Scotty Wynn was the worst penultimate day blow up because he would have won the final table if he'd gotten
from a ICM perspective, Kopp and Smith both missing the final table is the most egregious outcome.
Yeah, that's pretty
the last 8 day though.
For a one hand blow up, Kopp is the worst.
Yes,
by far.
And so, much like in 08, in 09, we have the supersized final table episode, a double-length episode. Again, still filmed as if it was a regular episode, but the production of it takes place after the original live production because we do get to see a Phil Ivey reflecting on his... we totally forgot to mention his mucking of the winning hand.
Oh my God! Yeah,
this was early on in day 8. Ivey makes a four board flush with his pocket pair. His opponent has to turn over their cards first at showdown, and Ivey doesn't realize he has the winning hand and mucks. It was a small pot, but a million chips. Well, 2 million chips really I would have had more of, which might have mattered in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, Norman Chad is heartbroken.
I mean, Ivey is Norman Chad's, a number 1 player every year, so it's always funny to see that exaggerated comedically.
He misread his hand. How could you misread your hand? Which is fair, yeah.
Yes. So for the final table, unlike the last couple of years, we have a kind of an overwhelming chip leader.
Right.
In years past, it's a bit more packed together. Nobody, we kind of have, we have the young kind of short stack, kind of like an 08 Craig Marquis, kind of in the represented by James Aikenhead.
Mm-hmm.
We have Saud and Ivey kind of at 5% of chips, kind of in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Saud being, despite beginning of 8th in chips, I think he had the most impressive final outcome of everybody.
Yeah.
By far, because he goes from 8th all the way up to the final 3, which is, again, very impressive. Ivey, kind of like his day 8 escapades, kind of has the same kind of hanging around, hoping for something good to happen. I mean, so many players around Ivey are blowing up or doubling up on these miracles and everything, and he, if he just gets one of those miracle, lucky, like, easy setups, he's in good shape.
Yeah,
but it never quite happens for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, the final table and all the coverage, if you've seen any coverage of 09 in poker, is all about Ivey to the point. Like, Moon gets a few mentions here and there in articles.
Yes.
Western Maryland Logger. Cada gets a couple mentions for being the youngest player to make the final table ever, I think.
Yes.
Well, until, later on. But
yes.
It's really just all Ivey, which... To be fair, I mean, I think there's a really great opening for the final table, talking about Ivey, talking about the great people in sports. We get a little blurb from Helmuth talking about how Ivey's the greatest. Doyle Brunson talks about how Ivey's the greatest. And Lon's like, is he the one if he wins? Like, I love that intro. But I just feel like it takes away from the other 8 guys.
Absolutely. I do feel that we knew Moon, we know Ivey. I think Begleiter we know pretty well. Shulman for sure. Saud we don't know at all. We don't really know much about Shaffel or Buckman.
Yeah, Cada we get a little bit of.
Aikenhead maybe a little bit more, but not really. So it definitely was to the detriment of learning the rest of the final table for sure.
Yeah.
Granted, I do feel that the first half especially of this final table coverage did give effort to showing pretty much everybody in a hand.
Yeah.
And that was good because. And firstly, the first elimination doesn't take place until hand number 59.
Yeah.
So that goes a long way into assuring that everyone's probably in the action at some point.
Yeah, I mean, Aikenhead, gets lucky doubling up. That's kind of why he doesn't bust early, but...
That was hand number 44.
Yeah.
So that's the first, 5 orbits without elimination.
Yeah, he doubles up and then he loses a bunch of chips, like, right afterward, and then he's back down.
Yes. And so Darvin Moon, he begins with 25 million more than the closest player.
Mm-hmm.
Buckman in second, Begleiter, those 3 kind of with some distance between them and the other players. Shulman being in the middle. He's definitely portrayed and definitely is shown as being the tightest player at the table by far.
Yeah, Shulman.
Ivey was getting a lot of respect from his raises for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
He had more hands he played where he would just raise and take it for the most part.
Right, that's true.
Which, unfortunately, with his small stack, he kind of needs to get action to kind of continue to build. He never really was able to accumulate chips to win this final table.
Yeah, I love the segment from Darvin Moon where he's talking about, did I hire a coach? No, I just went into the mountains in, Wyoming and just hung out with my friends and played poker.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to, Mark Newhouse a few years down the road not playing any poker. But,
I mean, Darvin Moon or Darvin Gump does make some pretty...
Yes!
Ludicrous plays, and not only are those plays ludicrous, the players do take full advantage of those situations.
Yep, he doubles up Saud pretty early on.
That was really the hand that kind of got Saud rolling because for the first 45 hands, Saud was still kind of hanging around at that 10 million mark, and then he finally doubles up to get into contention to really play and do good overall, considering how he began off the tournament.
I do love how on the turn, Moon has, 9%? He hits, he could have a gut shot, and everyone's like, oh, Moon's going to hit it on the river. Then, of course, he doesn't. But it's just funny how he just had this mystique to him.
Mm-hmm. And then I would say, there are a few segments in this episode that kind of clash with really kind of getting to the final table. We have Moneymaker talking about busting Johnny Chan.
Yeah.
Kind of really lame and out of place. We do see Mike Massel discuss his bluff shove on day 1 in 08. Again, kind of an odd time to bring that up.
I'm with you, yeah.
Ivey is definitely the main character of the first half, thematically, because he's also still alive. He actually, the first couple of eliminations take a relatively deep time into the broadcast, where Ivey, who ends up busting in 7th place, we'll get into that in a second. Mm-hmm. That's not until, I believe, minute 50.
Something like that, yeah. It was very late.
Of the episode. It's very late, which is not a bad thing, per se. It's just something I noticed because Usually they kind of halfway in, you're halfway into the eliminations.
Mm-hmm.
So if 9 left, you'd think 4-4, but really it's a little bit over halfway.
Yeah, and I think it's a function of the first elimination happening relatively late, and then they just want to drag it out so they have
this entire final table was among the longest. It lasted a total of 364 hands.
Crazy.
With a large chunk of that being heads up. I believe it was 93 hands of heads up play, but Ivey lasts 175 hands.
Not bad.
That's just under half of the entire final table for the third elimination to take place.
Yeah.
The guy that gets the short end of the stick in this episode is obviously Kevin Shaffel. He gets busted on hand number 68 with aces running into Buckman's kings, who makes quads, which it's always pretty gross.
Ugh, so gross.
But I mean, again, the set under overpair aces is kind of the recurring outcome of this the last 20 players onward to this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and the flop is king, queen, jack, so there's a little bit of hope, and the turn just takes that all.
And ironically, Aiken had it busted in ninth place to Shaffel.
Yeah.
So it's always that you imagine you're Shaffel, you just busted a player, you're feeling good, and all of a sudden you're gone next.
Just so gross. And Aikenhead, we should mention, got ninth place at the World Series of Poker Europe event.
Yes.
So he got ninth place here. So sort of a little bit of a new house.
Yes.
In 1 year.
Old house.
Old house. I like that. That's good.
Yes. Now, as my intro kind of referenced, the most disappointing hand, possibly just all of poker ever, is the Darvin Moon Ivey Ace King Ace Queen hand, where Darvin right in the window, first card of the flop face up, hits a queen. Not only does the crowd shout, Mattisau whispers to the camera, I put it right in the window. And then Lon goes, oh, and there's a queen. And Ivey doesn't flinch, of course, it's Phil Ivey, but
he's munching on his apple.
Exactly.
It's just so good. And there's a cute little edit where they edited this. I don't know if Ivey's actually looking at the Humphreys, but he goes all in and he turns and it cuts to the Humphreys as though he's supposed to be looking at them. I thought that was kind of neat. It's like the Humphreys have been hyped up as Ivey's two great poker friends, so it's just kind of like a nice little moment before he busts.
Mm-hmm.
And Moon is joking before the flop, nice hand.
Nice hand? You said nice hand.
And then the queen comes out and he doesn't react, and his rail is the only rail that's applauding in the entire arena. Yeah. So funny.
Yeah, no, Ivey kind of had a brief thump up. He'd won a couple of pots up to around 17 million. Joe Cada had gotten crippled.
Mm-hmm.
He doubles up off screen at one point and then doubles up the next hand to Ivey, which is always kind of unusual when that happens.
Yeah, we should mention, Cada goes on with fours. Ivey tanked for 5 minutes and then called with ace-8, and Shulman's like, I was super sick. And Cada's like, well, isn't that an obvious call? And Ivey's like, yeah, I tried to fold, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Which is just a funny little moment, and then, that cripples Ivey.
Yes. But, going back to our friend Darvin Moon, he just hands Begleiter 20 million chips for free.
Yeah.
In a hand that was the point of much controversy for us because the Poker Go version of that hand cuts out the bit where Darvin Moon bluffs his wife with what he had when he folded to Begleiter.
Yeah, he gets up out of his seat, goes over to his wife. It's like, I had queens.
I put him on ace king of spades. I ain't getting over 7.5.
And even the comment, I think it was Norm, says something like, oh, he bluffed his wife.
Yes.
It's a great little moment. It's not in the Poker Go coverage.
The version of the episode.
Yeah. It's not.
I couldn't believe it. Begleiter gets handed 20 million chips from Darvin, and then he began the final table in, I think, third in chips of 28 million, so or 30 million actually. And if you ask me, he has the least impressive final placing out of all the players given their starting stacks.
Sure.
So he begins in third place. He busts in sixth place when Darvin goes crazy to face queen again. And Begleiter holds the queens, and Darvin flops. Rivers. Rivers an ace on the river. Is just an example of, again, a bad Darvin play, but he gets rewarded this time. He kind of has a 50-50 kind of rewarded and punished ratio for his good and bad play, for his bad plays.
Can you imagine if an executive of Bear Stearns won the main event the year after the economy tanked? I remember saying to myself, oh, I wish, Darvin Moon had won. It would have been so much, it would have been so cool for poker. Now I'm like, I wish Begler had won. That just would have been so funny, but,
Yeah.
He had a shot. He had a bunch of chips. He could have made it.
So Begler ends up busting on hand number 187.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, the play does slow down considerably. Jeff Shulman ends up busting on hand number 236.
Wow.
So again, 5-handed, that's 10 orbits. He ends up busting to Hasoud in a flip. But again, by this point, they're skipping a lot of hands to fast forward to the elimination hands.
Yeah, but we do get Cada doubling up through Shulman. We have to talk about this, Mr. Luckbox.
Yes, Joe Cada, even more so than Darvin Moon in big spots. Because Moon had a lot of chips to start, so if he loses some hands, he's going to have chips anyway. Cada is all in for his life each time he's doing these. He's having these runouts.
Yeah, he has pocket threes against Shulman Jacks.
No big deal.
A three. So crazy.
Yes, and so after Shulman busts, though, we're left with 4 players,
right.
And this is where the action gets super fast.
Mm-hmm.
Every hand is a 80 million chip all in basically at this point. Eric Buckman overplays Ace Queen against Saud's Ace King pre-flop and ends up losing a 90 million chip pot on hand number 264.
Right.
And then just 7 hands later, he shoves in with Ace 5 against Darvin Moon, who has King Jack, and this was after the hand prior, hand number 270, Buckman had doubled up.
Yeah.
So they skipped that, and then they show his bust-up hand.
Yeah, Buckman was the chip leader at one point.
Yes.
To go from being the chip leader pretty quickly. It was like 20 hands or something that he went from being the chip leader to busting. Wow.
Yes.
Very crazy.
Which brings us to the crazy, hectic final 3-handed play.
Ooh.
Because just 4 hands after Buckman busts is when Saud busts. But to even get there in the first place, Joe Cada, on the very first hand after Buckman busts, I should say, doubles up with deuces against Saud's queens. And then 3 hands after that is when Saud ends up busting in a flip on the river against Cada again.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
His luck is so bad that Darvin Moon literally walks over Saud saying, "It should be me and you. It should be me and you."
Saud was the chip leader. This is what I said earlier when I said that Saud had a chance to win it. If Saud holds up against Cada, it's Saud and versus Moon, and I think Saud probably wins.
I'm with you there, 100%.
Yeah. He has 80% chance going to win the main event if he busts Cada.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but Saud wins, I would say, almost like every hand he's shown in the coverage until the very end.
I think so.
He's not showing very many hands in general, but either way, he just has a high win percentage for sure.
Yeah, we've seen subsequently he's a good player. He knows what to do at the poker table. It's just, wow. So
at the time of Cada busting Saud in 3rd place, heads-up play would actually commence the next day because the game would run so late. So it would be the start of kind of breaking the final table into 2 days of play that we'll see be a regular feature for that last part of the tournament. And the chip count actually is Moon at 59 million and Joe Cada at 136 million. So a little over 2-1 lead for Cada.
Yeah, nearly 3-1.
And heads-up play would last 93 hands, and Moon would actually be, pretty much dominating Cada for the majority of the heads-up play. At one point, Moon gets up to 145 million, which is more than what Cada would be in the heads-up match end.
Yeah, we've mentioned in the past the tendency in the coverage to show, 2 hands, basically 1 hand in which the second place finisher wins one to establish a bit of tension, and then the final hand.
Yes.
Here we get pretty much the opposite of that with Moon taking the lead right at the start of the heads-up coverage, having Cada all in, albeit Cada's 84%. It's just kind of interesting to see them change the narrative like that.
Well, it's also the longest heads-up by far at that point.
Very true.
In the main event. So you're going to have more back and forth, and you're going to want to devote more time because, again, this is a quarter of the total hands played at the final table. We've had some very, very short, single-digit hands played heads up in the past, so naturally there's only so much you can probably make out of television for that.
Still, in 07 they had 30 hands of heads up.
And we were talking about the cutout segment from the Beg Lighter Darvin Moon hand. There's a whole hand missing from the heads-up play that was in the original version of this episode. There was a hand where Darvin Moon had ace-jack, Joe Cada ace-queen. Darvin Moon, I think he 4-bets it and gets Cada to fold. Darvin makes a comment, how big was your bear? I had a monster. And Cada doesn't really share what he had, but that entire hand completely excised from the Poker Go version of this episode.
Yes, if you've got those hands, Poker Go, please upload them.
Or whatever happened to that part of the episode. I don't think it was a wildcard hand, so there's no reason advertising or anything for that not to be in the file.
No one even make any sense advertising because they've had full ads on previously.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
So, Darvin Moon was playing extremely well heads up, and I don't know if it was fatigue or just trying to end it fast. He ends up overplaying a straight draw against Joe Cada, who makes a pretty good call to dodge the river and then double up, and then only a few hands later, Darvin Moon busts in a flip pre-flop with Queen Jack against pocket nines.
You gotta fold Queen Jack. It's a bad call.
Not when it's for all your chips.
It's a bad call. You gotta fold it.
Mm. And so Joe Cada, who we will see again, and I was rooting for him wholeheartedly when we see him again, makes it as the youngest main event winner of all time.
Yep, it's just funny. I mean, this is how so many people remember him in 2009 as a luck box.
Yes.
How he just got so lucky against Saud and so on, and then in 2018 when we see him again, he's like the one. He's the Ivey of 2018, where he's like the pro to root for, and
he plays extremely well poker. Extremely top-level poker in 2018.
Yeah.
And definitely not relying on luck to make a deep run in the main event by any means.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably, not his tournament performance, but he's probably like the greatest main event winner poker player since Moneymaker. He's had the greatest career of a main event winner since Moneymaker.
Quite possibly.
I mean, I'd say he's above. I mean, McKeon's in competition for that, I'd say. Maybe Duhamel. Say they're the top three?
Not the main event, but other events for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in other events collectively.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. I think we're kind of underselling just how entertaining and wild this episode is. Like the number of crazy all-ins, come 2-outers, 3-outers, crazy blow-ups by Darvin Moon. It makes, for me, by far the most entertaining final table we've covered so far.
Yeah, and just the natural, there's so much hype spent on Ivey. The one sort of upside to that is that it kind of tricks you that they think like, oh, Ivey's going to make, he'll be heads up or something. Yes. He busts in 7th place.
Yes.
So that's the sort of one benefit of it, is that's a bit of a surprise.
And we kind of have the holy trinity of like the three poker archetypes. You have the top pro, the old, average Joe, and the young kid that no one ever heard about until today. All being, prominent and representing their categories well. And I think that makes, again, for a memorable final table, a memorable number 9, even if some of the other 6 are kind of on the blander side.
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I really like this final table.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, it was fun.
I should say, though, that the pay jumps, the pay structure for this final table, I think were pretty horrible.
Oh, they suck.
The first 3 eliminations, the pay jumps are so tiny, and even the fourth page, the next page after that. I mean, 9th place won just over $1.25 million.
Mm-hmm.
8th place wins $1.3 million, so that's like $37,000 more, which is, I mean. That's a smaller pay jump than the previous pay levels. I feel like that should be, each pay jump should have more money in between it.
Yeah, I mean, the gap in between 10th and 9th place is more than $350,000.
So I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't get it at all. Like, why not just have
even with the 10 cents of interest that they got from waiting 3 months for the payout, didn't make sense.
Yeah, I think Shaffel got, $3 of interest or something, something like that.
Ivey wins $1.4 million for 7th place, so $100,000 more than 8th place. Again, a pretty small pay jump, and then obviously by the last couple, okay, it's pretty standard, but
yeah, I mean, it's not until you get Jeff Schulman gets a little under $2 million, Buckman gets $2.5 million that you have substance.
So again, I think a little unusual the pay jumps there for sure.
But here we are complaining about people winning over $1 million.
I know, the weirdest thing. Oh, for Ivey, that's like 2 craps table dice rolls. So let's not exaggerate.
Yeah.
And so, reflecting on this main event in general, go into some of the segments here. The straight from the pros segments, I feel like that advice is far too simplistic nowadays for it to have any sort of merit to the audience now.
Yeah, I mean, the game has changed in 12 years, to be fair.
Yes.
But...
And it's so situational. It's so context specific. It's not going to work as generic advice for the average player.
And it's also like, I mean, they're talking not to like professional poker players with that advice. They're talking to amateurs. They're talking to people who just idly turn on ESPN.
I felt that the wild card hand feature lost steam, pun intended, by the end of the run. I felt that the day one hands were very good. You know, you had Lex Feldhouse's amazing wild card hand bluff, for instance. That's, for me, the most enjoyable wild card hand of all of them.
It's up there.
And as it went on, they just did not seem to pick good hands to use for that feature.
Yeah, I mean, and also the banter just between Juan and Norm sort of dies down with that as time goes on. Yeah. The banter overall for them is pretty good. Just Bear Stearns alone just elevates it.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I would have liked that segment to have been fine-tuned as time went on.
I felt that overall this main event was much less, comedic or funny in tone, less viral as far as like 2-minute clips that have just either super entertaining blow-ups or hand run-outs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the foul table sure has that, but most foul tables will have something of that nature. But just across the entire run of the episode, it's definitely not, especially in comparison to 08.
Mm-hmm.
It suffers in comparison to 08 in that respect, for sure, for me.
I think this ends strong. I like day 8, as I mentioned. I like the final table, as I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it does. It just doesn't have the steam that previous seasons have had.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I still like it overall.
Yes, I mean, I'm comparing the experience for average Joe versus average poker Joe.
Sure.
I think this is a better year for average poker Joe compared to years past, but it's not as good for average Joe.
That's fair enough.
That's my demarcation, and that will probably carry over going forward for 2010, maybe even 2011, 2012. Mm-hmm. But I think it's worth mentioning.
That's fair enough.
And again, 25 episodes. We've been gradually getting longer and longer. That's still going to continue. 2010 is 27 episodes. I think 2011 is like 34 episodes, something crazy or something. It's getting bigger and bigger. Again, this is an important year because it kind of merges combining names we know from years past and highlighting names that we'll see in the future. It's kind of a time capsule and a lot of these players are making very, very, very deep runs, so that kind of holds a certain relevance in poker history for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I was surprised to see Ben Lamb pop up, Mark Etienne McLaughlin, just goes to show these guys have skill. It's not just all about luck.
Yes. And I think that is kind of my thoughts on it. I mean, as far as where does it rank in comparison to 03 through 09, I liked the day 2 and day 3 stuff more than the last couple of years, so that definitely helps. I think the average quality of an episode is definitely high. I do think that there are fewer low points. There were some real stinkers in years past that we talked about, so it definitely ranks up high on there for me.
Yeah, I'd put it toward the top, too. Do you feel that the length overall is warranted?
For the day 8, I like that because...
Yeah, me too.
I mean, one of the worst parts of past Final 3 table coverage was seeing this guy went in 25th, and him in 24th, and him in 23rd. You want to see each one go because half of these guys we've seen up to that point. The other half we need to know for the final table.
Right. Yeah.
And so for the November 9 era, you want to have you want to see each person play a couple hands each, and we do get that for every party in the final 9.
Agreed. Yeah.
I do think that the length. I mean, future years will be skipping the day 1, day 2, day 3, and if a player is not going to make a deep run, then it's kind of a drag to have to sit at the future table.
Yeah.
Because you kind of feel like you're wasting your time with them. So that's kind of looking forward, of course. But I'm okay with how long this was partially because we broke into 2.
Yeah.
But I could see how maybe some folks just want to kind of get to the nitty gritty. In which case, they probably just have to watch partway through and start there.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling about it is having, breaking down day one the way they do toward the start of the season, that's warranted because that's how the tournament is structured. You want to make sure you have an introduction to a lot of players, and you want to, see Cunningham and other players like that early on who might not last later. I think, having day 8 broken up is warranted the way they do it. Does, as you mentioned, it is frustrating to see, 25th place just pop up on the screen briefly and go away. But I feel like, in the middle, having like day 5 split up into so many episodes and so on, I don't really feel like that's warranted too much.
Well, I mean, the thing is with day 5, particularly with day 4 and day 5, that's when the pace of eliminations really picks up once the bubble's bursted. And with so many players, celebrities, names, you kind of want to see all of them individually, if they made it that far. So I understand in that respect. But, I mean, compared to when we had 10, 12 episodes, that did cause some certain parts of the tournament to feel rushed. And this is the main event. And the tournament's not going to always be 8 days. 8 days, they only would use the 8-day structure for 2 more years after this. After that, they went back to a 7-day structure. So that might affect the overall pacing and flow of it. But we'll see how that goes when we get there.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like day 5 they could have combined into two episodes instead of 3.
So it was 1 episode too long for you. No, 24, 2 is good. 25 is bad. Is that your...
Maybe a little bit. Day 6, I don't know. Maybe you could have combined into 2. Maybe. I just think there's a few little pacing issues here and there.
Well, for the most, a lot of these episodes would cover like 1 or 2 levels within 1 episode.
Yeah.
And that's going to kind of be the standard going forward. Is 1 episode covers 1 level when we get to 2011, 2012. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of thoughts about that pacing. But
yeah. And then there's my standard beef, which is cut out the segments, give me 1 more hand.
I agree. I mean, the segments here is just, they fall into a rut of, let's just move on here.
Yeah.
Revert, and these are, I would say 90% of the hands shown are from the main event coverage.
Anyway.
And a couple of them are from obscure events, other bracelet events. But I didn't care for them for sure.
In the pre-YouTube era, they're warranted because people can't pull up those, big clips. But it's 09. YouTube already exists, so we don't need that anymore.
That's true. Any other thoughts on the main event? I mean, it's going to be a while before our next episode. We have to go on hiatus while I'm in Vegas, and then we have to start watching the 2010 main event, which will change a few things up substantially. I'll be interested to see how that flows in comparison to 08 and 09.
Yeah, we won't really be able to watch the 2010 main event because, the current main event's going on right now. So,
yes.
Yeah, we'll try to get it out as soon as we can. Probably the same format divided into 2 episodes, roughly half. Let us know if this is a format that you like. Do you want this all to be in 1 episode? I understand, some people may look at channels that divide, videos into 2 episodes and be like, oh, they're just trying to get more views or whatever. Or, they're trying to just stretch out comments or stuff. If that's how you feel about us,
let us know
what we're trying to do, but, let us know what you prefer. Or if you just want to change in format and the way we talk about episodes. I mean, I like this recap format, and we, stop to talk about hands that we like and viral moments that we like. But if you want us to be, go a little less into the nitty-gritty of each episode, let us know. We're always
we always encourage comments. Anybody give us a shout out, email us, comment us. We'll talk about you in the podcast for sure. When I'm in Vegas, I'll be trying to see as many names as we have talked about in our talks and see if I can get somebody else to join us for a show or 2. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yep, and if our friend makes the final table, boy, you'll hear about it.
Oh yeah. So and if you're watching on Poker Go, the main event this year, just keep your eyes out for me. I'll be trying to mug all the cameras out there. I'll be there starting from day 1D onwards. So if you see me, put it in the comments, hashtag I spotted you, or hashtag where's Waldo? Ben, or something like that. Just whatever, and you get a shout out in our podcast next time.
Yep, and best of luck to everybody who's going to play the main event. You can still register up on day 2, right?
I think late reg until the end of the first level on day 2. So you have, if you're just trying to play like skate by to the money, then you have that option. Not that I recommend it, but it could be. I'm sure there'll be at least a few people trying that strategy, and we'll see if it works for them.
Yeah, and obviously a bunch of side events going on beside the WSOP. So if you're playing those, good luck to you too. And shout out to all the casino employees and dealers and all that. Y'all are the unsung heroes of poker. Thanks for everything that you do. Y'all are awesome. Just want to give
And
that
we'll
a
see you
shout out.
guys next time.